Welcome anyone who is watching live and anyone who is watching the replay, the recording of this video. And today what I want to do is I want to give you a walkthrough of how to get energy, and this is basically what I think of as my way of troubleshooting my energy. And I hope that with this video I can paint a clearer picture as far as the entire process, I guess, that I went through to get my energy back. So oftentimes I talk about a lot of different things that I do, from diets to whether it's going ketogenic, doing fasting, and all these things. But in the back of my mind, really what's going on, it's this process right here. This is really what I am after. This is really what I am looking at, that I'm thinking, okay, by following these different diets and or routines, I am essentially going through this process. So let's go ahead and get started. So number one, the very first thing is vitamin D. This is basically possibly the most important one that I have basically come across, and this is where it all starts. So I want you to think of your body as a battery, and really every cell of your body is in fact a battery. And so vitamin D and hormones, to me, it's essentially like the charge of the battery. So as your charge drops, meaning as your vitamin D levels drop or your hormone levels drop, then your energy levels drop. When I went and got tested for vitamin D, I was low. I was at 22 nanograms per deciliter, and you're supposed to be at 55 plus. So for me, this was basically the first step to getting my energy back. Is I needed to make sure that I had enough charge in my batteries, which for me, it basically comes from vitamin D. And then hormones, these kind of like go hand in hand. To me, like, I think of vitamin D and hormones as basically what makes up the charge in our batteries, right? And so for hormones, there's different hormones that give us energy. Testosterone is one of them. You got dopamine, you've got adrenaline, right? So all of these hormones and others combined with vitamin D, to me, that's essentially the charge of your battery, right? And so if you have low vitamin D levels, or if you have low levels of hormones, then your energy levels are going to be low, and it's basically because you don't have the charge in your battery. So that is basically the first step. Now, just like a battery, you need minerals, you need some sort of conductive material in order to use that energy that's in your body, right? That every cell of your body is like a battery. You need these minerals. And so I want you to think just like in your house, or if you just pick up a battery, the moment you get like some sort of conductive material to touch positive to negative, right? Positive to negative, this conductive material is really what powers everything up. And so this conductive material can be anything like copper. So if you look at the wiring in your house, if you ever plug in your phone or your laptop or whatever, everything is basically a copper wire. But there's a lot of other minerals that are conductive. You have magnesium, you have zinc, copper, magnesium, zinc, manganese. You have a lot of these conductive minerals that your body needs in order to use up the energy that you are basically storing. And again, the energy comes from vitamin D and hormones. Then you need those minerals to actually use up the energy. So this is one of the reasons why I add magnesium and ionic magnesium and other trace minerals either throughout the pink Himalayan salt or the sometimes Celtic sea salt also has a lot of these minerals. And basically what I am looking at is the conductive minerals that are going to allow me to use the energy that I am getting from vitamin D and hormones. Next is this enzyme, coenzyme Q10. Now, this was a little bit, I guess there's a lot more chemistry, I guess, involved for this, but let me explain this in, I guess, the simplest term, I guess, that I can. And I think of this kind of like the alternator of your car. If you think about it, we are carbon-based creatures, right? I mean, even the word carbohydrate, right? You have the word carbo from carbon, right? A protein is basically the same thing. It's carbon and hydrogen plus nitrogen, but it's still a carbon-based, thing. And so an alternator in your car, the way that it works is you have a carbon brush, and it's basically rubbing up against a copper wire, and that creates a spark. I think of coenzyme Q10 as that spark producing, basically what powers up what they call the mitochondria. It's essentially what allows you to take energy from food energy, and basically convert it into ATP, which is the actual energy that you use, right? And so this is essentially needed for that. It's basically what activates. It's kind of like you can have a battery and a copper wire turn on, but then you have a switch that you flip on, and the moment you flip it on, then it basically gets activated. That's how I think of coenzyme Q10, right? And so a lot of people are actually deficient in this right here. Our bodies usually produce coenzyme Q10, and there's a couple of ways that it does it. One of the first ways that I personally started to increase my levels of coenzyme Q10 was through sun exposure. And I think this is a little bit more advanced, but really it's this is when I was juicing a lot, and I was basically adding a lot of chlorophyll into my diet. And so basically chlorophyll plus sun exposure is what I found that is what helps the body produce its own coenzyme Q10. And then the other way is, if you understand that the body stores coenzyme Q10 in most of the organs, like the heart, the kidney, the pancreas, the liver, then when it comes to a food source of the coenzyme Q10, you're going to find that the best food source for coenzyme Q10 is basically going to be organ meats, like I just mentioned, right? So in our bodies, our body stores coenzyme Q10 primarily in our liver, hearts, pancreas, kidneys, and stuff like that. So if you wanted to get coenzyme Q10 from, food sources, you can do it through organ meats, or you can do it through chlorophyll, which will basically be a lot of your greens, like your spinach and broccoli and anything that's green that has chlorophyll. But then now you need sun exposure in order for that to work. So if it's just food source, you can just do organ meats. If it's plant-based, you want to get greens, chlorophyll, but you also need sun exposure in order to produce it. So again, you need the charge, you need a conductive material to use it, and then you need the spark, something to start it out. And vitamins, you got your vitamins like B12 that also help with a lot of that. And at this point, I'm not exactly 100% like how it all relates, but I just know that this has been big. Vitamin B12 has been big, and there's a lot of people that have made this kind of like mainstream, that they go get B12 shots for energy. I don't like the idea of doing shots. I personally get my B12 from either organ meats or my sources of chlorophyll, which blue-green algae is the one that I use the most. I'll write it down here, blue-green algae. That's where I get my B12 vitamins. So this is essentially, from this initial part that I just shared, this is what I think of as the mechanics of getting energy, right? So I've had, friends that ask me like, hey, how do I get more energy? If you do just one of these things, you can start to experience a little bit more energy. I have, one of my friends, Brian, I don't know if Brian, if you're watching, but one of my friends, Brian, he asked me, like, hey, how do I get more energy? And all I really did, I told him, like, hey, just get more minerals into your body. And I basically introduced him to pink Himalayan salt and ionic magnesium. And just with that alone, he started to notice the difference. And that's basically because with the minerals, now your body has the ability to use the energy that it already has, right? So all of these things, that's the mechanical side, I guess, of how the body gets energy. Now, the rest of what I'm going to talk about is more like other things that you want to consider. One is food, right? And so there are foods that you can eat. And here's the thing, the way that I think of food is if you're eating food and an hour later you are sleepy, right? Like if you're eating lunch and, say like it's noon, 1, 2 p.m., you're getting like tired that you feel like you want to take a nap. Really what that is saying is that the food that you are eating requires too much digestion. And so for me, I don't necessarily, as I'm talking about this, like I don't necessarily share this to say like, hey, you shouldn't be eating food that requires a lot of digestion. That's not really what, what I'm going for here, but really it's just understanding that, hey, there are foods that require digestion. So the reason why I bring this up is because right now my diet is primarily consisting of ketogenic smoothie, which is primarily coconut oil, avocado, hemp seeds, and pumpkin seeds. And so there's not a whole lot of digestion that requires, and although it's a lot of, it requires more fat digestion, I guess I should say. But anyway, so I bring that up because I tend to do a lot of liquids nowadays as far as like what my diet is. My diet is, I drink a lot of fluids more than anything, a lot of water, a lot of like the blue-green algae, my red hibiscus tea and stuff like that. And so a lot of the things that I do, they don't really require a whole lot of digestion. So for me, when I am feeding and nourishing myself, food does not make me tired. There are people who don't eat anything else other than cooked food. And the important part to understand here when it comes to food is that you have food in its raw state. Now, I'm going to see if I can do this here, but let's suppose that this is a chain of either amino acids, so like protein, right? Or if it were to be a carbohydrate, same thing. Or if it were to be fat, same thing. It's just a chain of components essentially that make up the bigger piece. Well, food in its raw state basically has all of the enzymes that the body needs in order to digest food, right? So if you eat, say for example, I don't know, an apple, if it's raw, then all the enzymes are basically part of the apple, right? That's the whole idea of eating whole foods, and it's the whole idea of eating raw foods. The moment you begin to cook, and I'm going to draw this upwards to signify a raise in temperature, as you begin to raise temperature, enzymes begin to denature, they begin to go away. And so raising temperature to cook any kind of food is basically what Louis Pasteur discovered with milk. And that's why they call it pasteurization. And it's basically when you heat up milk to a point where all the enzymes get denatured, well, now milk can no longer go sour on the shelves because the enzymes come from the lactobacillus bacteria. And so essentially cooking food, what it does is that it kills, not only denatures the enzymes, but also kills any kind of bacteria. And remember, one of the things that I am big on, and basically what my entire project here is about, is understanding that our health comes from our gut flora. Our gut flora is basically this bacteria right here. So eating nothing but cooked food, pasteurized food, to me is basically relying on our gut flora for digestion. This was my big epiphany. Once I realized that I had issues with digestion, I realized that, hey, my gut flora is not good enough to digest cooked food. And this is why I started to do things like juicing, why I went on a raw vegan diet. Even though I'm not vegan, I don't consider myself to be a raw vegan person. But because of my background of brewing beer, what I understood is, barley in its raw state, has all these enzymes and all these bacteria. And so brewing for me, what it did is it basically taught me digestion. It taught me that, hey, you can break down this food, and basically there is, the first step to digestion is what you would see as sprouting, right? So when you take a seed and you water it, you add minerals, you add the water, and basically you have the right amount of temperature, pH, and everything else, and you have the bacteria. That begins a digestive process. So you can eat sprouted foods, and that's easier to digest. And so what I'm trying to share with you here is that you're going to notice that the more cooked foods that you eat, the more energy your body's going to require for digestion. But if instead of eating just cooked foods, if you start adding more raw foods, sprouted foods, fermented foods, these foods are essentially already digested. I want you to think of fermented foods as pre-digested foods. Essentially, it's what it is. So, for example, one of the ones that I use is fermented cod liver oil. Right, and this is what I try to explain to people, is that you can have regular cod liver oil, and that would be considered basically cod liver oil in the raw state. And so when you eat cod liver oil, if you were to supplement with that, now you're relying on your gut flora to digest cod liver oil. But if you actually get fermented cod liver oil, then this has already been digested, so you no longer need to rely on your gut flora. Not to mention that your body doesn't need to go through digestion, so your energy levels stay up while eating fermented type of foods. And so this is the spectrum that, if you understand this concept, you can start to do simple tweaks to your diets. One of them is, for example, a transition that I try to get people to go through is, most people are in the standard American diet. They're eating carbohydrates. They're eating basically whatever and anything comes, in front of them, just like I did. This is where I started, just eating the standard American diet. Pizza, burgers. I was a home brewer. I would brew my own beer and basically had all kinds of junk food, and I was happy and I loved it. But because I wanted to heal my gut, and I understood basically what I am sharing with you here, I understood that I needed to go towards a more keto type of diet. But this is a big leap, right? I personally could not do it. It took me a long time to cut out sugar from my diet. And so I believe that a good transitioning diet is basically paleo. And paleo, what it does, if you get a cookbook on paleo, you're going to find that basically one of the things that you're going to notice is that it starts to kind of restrict carbohydrates, or at least it gives you more, better carbohydrates. And I'll probably be doing a lesson on carbohydrates, because I don't necessarily steer away from sugar or carbohydrates. I don't consider myself to be fully keto. I just use keto just because it's very good for hormone production. But when you go with paleo, one of the ones you're going to notice if you look for autoimmune paleo is that they start to add a lot of fermented foods, which would be things like sauerkraut, or maybe kimchi, just to name a couple of the more popular ones. But basically anything that is fermented. And so what that does is now you have some cooked food. So whether you're eating, chicken, steak, or whatever, or even if it's just a salad, and even if it's a salad, but all your vegetables are in a raw state, by adding fermented foods, you're basically lowering the amount of digestion that the body is going to have to go through to break down all that food. So the more digestion your body needs to go through, the lower your energy levels you're going to feel. And that's why people get that after lunch kind of like slump, right around 1, 2 p.m. It's because of this. I don't get this because the foods that I eat are no longer primarily cooked foods. I eat a lot of fermented foods, a lot of liquids, a lot of foods that don't require as much digestion. So big topic here. I could keep going on it, but hopefully you got the idea, you got the gist of it. Second is basically gut flora, and it kind of goes back to food. But when it comes to gut flora, what I want to emphasize here is that you can have all of this checked, right? Where you say, hey, I have my vitamin D levels are good, my hormones are good, I'm taking all the minerals, I'm getting coenzyme Q10, I got my vitamin B12, I'm eating good foods. But if you have autoimmune conditions, and this is basically where I am at, this is the problem that I am trying to solve myself with this is basically what I am documenting is my journey as I am fixing this right here, my gut flora, my gut issues. What I understand now is that bad gut flora, which could be things like yeast overgrowth. And I mean, there's a ton of like bad bacteria. I'm just going to kind of shine light on this one just because it's the most popular one and the one that I believe most people are dealing with, including myself. One of the things that yeast overgrowth and all the other bad gut flora, what they do is that they release toxins. And toxins, if you go back to my battery example, you have a battery, you have your minerals, your conductive material. Toxins are essentially like rust on a cable, and basically it limits the conductivity of your minerals. And so you could be actually eating good food, but if you have bad bacteria in your gut, what you're feeding is bad gut flora. And the reason why bad bacteria is considered bad, one of the reasons is because they produce so much toxicity, so many toxins, and these are actually called endotoxins. Endo meaning that they come from within, they're created within the body. So you don't have to be eating junk food for these toxins to be created in your body. All you need is to have the bad gut flora, which again, my definition of an autoimmune condition, right? And this is just my definition. This is not a medical definition. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm a home brewer. My definition of an autoimmune condition is that we have bad bacteria in our guts and that we don't have enough good bacteria in our guts. And we're producing so much toxicity, endotoxins, that it's basically limiting our conductivity. And this is basically what is bogging us down. And so a big part of my journey and my, basically what I am working on is essentially fixing my gut flora for that reason. And this is where a lot of the detoxing comes into play for me. This is why I detox my liver, my kidneys, my gut, my skin, every filter in the body, I basically detox. And it's for this reason. It's because I understand that my body's producing so much toxicity. And remember, when you understand toxicity, the body needs to protect itself from toxins. And if it cannot get rid of that toxicity, that's where the body basically creates body fat. So this isn't just for energy. This is really also why I am able to lean down now. And basically it's because I understand that if I can reduce toxicity, if I can clean my body from toxins, here's the saying, clean is lean. Lean is clean. So if your body, here's how you find out. You want to find out if you have toxicity in your body, just look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, if you have body fat, that's basically toxic waste in your body, and your body's just trying to protect itself, which makes body fat a good thing in that case because it's basically protecting itself from all those toxins. The moment you get rid of all that toxicity, all the bad gut flora, your body no longer has need for body fat, right? So this is kind of like a little segue of, from going from working on energy to fat loss. And it's just a matter of really taking care of health. And so that's why I don't think of like, stuff that I do as like, I don't ever think of my diet as like, oh, I'm doing this to lose weight. I'm really doing it because I'm increasing my vitality, my energy levels, my health. And then body fat is just kind of like, I just lose it as a byproduct of doing all these other good things for myself. So working on your gut flora, this is really the main project that I'm working on. So from here on out, everything else is, other little things that you can improve on. Number one is sleep. Sleep is important for energy. The primary reason for it is because most of your hormones are produced during your sleep, right? And you can only get good sleep if you're able to digest food properly. And I've talked about this before, but when you eat protein, protein is just a chain of amino acids. So digestion is basically breaking down this chain into smaller chains. And it continues to break those down until you get to the single link. And that's basically what an amino acid is. Now, amino acids are used for the production of hormones, right? You have tyrosine, if I can spell that. Tyrosine, for example, is used to produce or to convert the thyroid hormone T4 into T3. So without digestion, you cannot get amino acids. Without amino acids, you cannot get hormones. Tyrosine is also used for your happy, feel-good hormones like, dopamine. And there's other like tryptophan. It's another amino acid. Tryptophan. And tryptophan is used for like serotonin and melatonin. Melatonin is basically your sleeping hormone. So you can see how this is an entire cycle where if you sleep good, then you can produce hormones. If you can produce hormones, you can sleep good. In order for that to happen, you need to be able to digest food. If you lose the ability to digest food, which is what I had, this is why, for me, once I understood that I had leaky gut and that I had problems digesting food, I knew that this entire process was broken. That's how I understood why my body was not producing the thyroid, my thyroid hormone, why I was not producing testosterone, why I was not basically getting, serotonin, dopamine, right? Without serotonin, dopamine, you begin to feel anxious, depressed, and, all of these things that you begin to feel. And it's just a vicious cycle until you're able to fix digestion. And this is why gut flora is how you digest food. Gut flora only works with minerals, and you need basically all of these components to be in place. So you can kind of get a bigger picture of everything that I did to get more energy. And it's not just like, oh, I just took vitamin D and that's it. No, there's no such thing as just taking one supplement. You have to basically look at the entire picture and understand why I do all my fasting and all of these other things that I share with you, on a daily basis now. Is so that you understand, why, the reason why I have so much energy nowadays is because I understand all of this, and everything that I do in my diet basically caters to this entire process. Now, the last thing that I believe is really, really, really important is environment. And environment can go a whole lot of different ways. Number one, environment can be, just basically the things that you come in contact with. So we can start with toxic products. So toxic products could be things like, anything from just essentials like your if you use like any kind of like body wash or soaps, if you like laundry detergents, for women, you guys get hit a lot more with makeup and lipstick and all these things that have a lot of toxicity. All of that, basically, remember, toxins are like rust on a cable. Basically, it brings down your conductivity. There's a lot of that. But then, there's what I guess we'll call physical toxic, and then there is what I will call more of the mental toxicity. And this, for this environment, is more about people. Who are you surrounding yourself with, right? You could be in an environment where maybe at work you don't like being there. That can create stress, and stress can affect your hormones, right? So there's that side of if you're around people that bring you down, that don't uplift you, that don't encourage you to succeed or do things like that, that's a bad environment that is going to drain your energy. And even going further than that, let's say you take care of all of this, everything has been taken care of, and you're good. You're like, okay, I'm good. I got all of that taken care of. Well, I think there's one last component to energy, and energy is something that can be created as far as motivation goes. So if you have your hormones like dopamine is, the hormone that's known to make you feel good and also motivate you and make you feel energized. What I believe gives people energy is really purpose. And I believe that this is where a lot of people are going, are missing the mark, is basically that they're waking up and they don't have a purpose. They don't have a goal that they are striving for. And we are goal-oriented creatures. If you're just waking up and just doing the same thing, it basically makes it so that life becomes a routine, daily grind, no purpose at all whatsoever. But the moment that you can sit down and figure out, hey, what is my purpose? What is the bigger goal that I am working towards to? That I cannot even begin to explain, or basically I cannot even have a way to describe how much energy this gives you right here. When you wake up, if you are not excited about your day, that is because you're lacking purpose. And this is one way that I'm finding people are lacking energy, is that they're just waking up and all that they have to look forward to is to basically go to work and pay bills, as opposed to purpose, having something to work towards to, right? Making this world a better place, making an impact on the world. This is one of the reasons why I am making these videos. And I don't care, like when I do these Facebook Lives, I don't care if there is one person watching or if there is 0 people watching. I'm doing this because I feel like I have a purpose in life to share all of this information. And it basically starts out with the stories that I've been hearing from people who are listening to my information and they apply, whether it's one thing or 2 things, and I'm finding that, hey, there are people who are actually getting better, who people who basically maybe didn't have hope as far as their health goes, and I come across, they come across me, and I basically give them a roadmap to basically get something that they thought was a lost cause. That actually gives me a lot of energy. I basically work a full time, and so when I come and do these videos, physically I am tired, but mentally I have so much energy because I have a purpose that I need to basically fulfill. And so I believe that part of environment is this right here, is having a purpose. And so I think that if you can pay attention to not only this, right, all of this is very important, but also do not forget about figuring out what is a purpose, what is something that can give you energy mentally to basically go throughout the day. So that is my message for today. I'm going to cut this video short because this is, I just wanted to share just what's needed here. This is basically my energy troubleshooting guide. This is how I get energy, not just physically, but also mentally. I hope that you got tons and tons of value from this. If you want to learn more, I'm going to post a link to a blog post that I did on producing how to get more energy. So check that out and let me know in the comments below what your number 1 takeaway from this is. If you plan on implementing any of it, I would love to know, and that way I can maybe create more content more specific to either one of these topics. So Thank you everyone who was watching live. I saw a couple people were liked the video. Actually, I'm able to see here. So Barbie, thank you so much. Christine Wilson, thank you so much for liking my video. I hope that you guys got value from this. And anyone who is going to be watching the replay, again, if you were to comment, I'm also going to thank you in advance. I appreciate you guys who engage with my content, whether you like it, comment, or share it. I believe that, we are doing a good thing as a community to spread this good information with everyone that needs it. So that's it, and I will hope to see you guys next time. Talk to you later.